Yo guys, what's up? Wanted to hop on here. I can't say it's gonna be really quick. This is this is a super long training that I'm gonna bring to you guys. Let's just fuck with this here for a second. Okay, so this is going to be this is the holiday nutrition guide. Okay, I really wanted to work very hard this year on building like a comprehensive guide. In past years, I've kind of done like, here's quick tips, no real story behind it, just like hey, follow these quick 10 strategies, and you can kind of stay within the limits during the holidays and go into the new year on the same playing field, right? So I wanted to go a little bit deeper on this one because I feel like as I evolve as a coach, as also kind of like a content creator, where I'm trying to build these resources to help people, I want to go a little bit deeper, right? And I enjoy writing these things. Now this one took a little bit longer than expected. I would have loved to have this complete like a week ago, maybe even 2 weeks ago, but I was working really hard to get this finished today because we're fucking close to Christmas, and some of the tips here, even like, hey, December 1st, we shouldn't be like it's Christmas and start making all excuses. Well, it's December fucking 18th, so we only have so much longer. But at the same time, I think if we can kind of prepare ourselves in advance, think about some of the things that we need to do during the holidays. Because the funny thing about the holidays is because you have Christmas, because you have New Year's and everything in between, a lot of family stuff going on, it's almost like as soon as we're off for work, so whether that's like this Friday and then you're off until the new year, or whatever that looks like for you, maybe you're working a few days in between, sometimes we can just get in a weird place where we have those 2 weeks off and everything can just fall apart, right? So my goal for this document really is to give you guys a foundational structure of how to work through that so that you can either go into the new year on the same level playing field as you entered, the end of the year, so that we haven't put on body fat, we haven't kind of completely sabotaged our progress, that we haven't fell backwards and we feel like we're going to be into this like binging thing and again stuff like that. So to protect our habits and be in a good place, but then also not be in a worse place, right? So it's really hard and really difficult to go through the holidays of like, hey, I'm going to continue losing a pound a week or whatever that looks like through the holidays, because that's just really difficult. Not to say that it can't be done, it can be, but that takes a lot of effort. So with this, just really want to bring you some base level knowledge and strategies that we can use to do that. So how I decided to lay this out, and I actually gave you guys a little bit of a summary here about some of the tips that I've covered. They're broken down to 4 categories. All right. We have nutrition specific tips. So that's basically, things that you can specifically manipulate with your nutrition. Some things to think about when going into the holidays, family dinners, and sometimes those weird in between periods of like, okay, I have a holiday or I have like a Christmas party tonight. I have a family thing in 2 days. Like that one day in between, it's kind of weird. So like, how do I approach that? That kind of thing. Second category being habit tips, really more focused on some things that we can do outside of nutrition to help us stay engaged and in the rhythm. Then some psychological tips as well, so that it's really about reframing your perspective and changing your mind about how to approach these things, because a lot of the times it isn't just about the specific things you do with your nutrition. A lot of the stuff you probably already know. So if you can just change your perspective when approaching the holidays, sometimes it can put you in a good place as well. And then lastly, some logistical tips of just, hey, just do this very quick, activity that's going to put you in a good place. And it's not really kind of like nutrition related. And some of these can probably fall into multiple categories, but I really wanted to kind of lay these out nice and simple for you guys. So I know my voice is kind of weird, so I hope I don't lose my voice throughout this training, and hopefully I don't make this too long. I don't want this to go like 50 minutes, as some of these do, but this is a 23-page training, so either way. Okay, so let's get into nutrition-specific tips first. And as a caveat, before I actually fully dig in, I'm not going to go like deep into everything, like read this word for word, so please either use this to follow along, read this yourself if you have a chance, but if you're cool with just listening, watching the video, then that's good as well. But there might be some, if there's one of these that like specifically pique your interest, like, ooh, that would be a really good idea for me, then grab the document, go to the point, and dig in. And then if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. So, nutrition specific tips. Like, as we know, nutrition is probably one of those important things to watch out for when it comes for the holidays, right? We just need to be very, very careful about how we approach it, because some of these things can just derail us and put us in a weird spot, right? So let's go through a couple tips of things that we can do nutritionally to make sure that we stay on track. So first thing, and these are not listed by order of importance, by the way, just in case we thought that. First one, don't skip meals to make room, keep things consistent and routine. All right. So I feel like a lot of the times athletes get into this weird thing, like we're really concerned about being in a caloric surplus. We want to make sure that we're in our caloric deficit if we're fat loss, and we kind of get in this weird place of I don't want to overeat. So therefore, if caloric surplus or I guess just the energy intake through the day is the most important thing, I'll just make sure that I skip meals early in the day so then I have a bigger bandwidth of energy that I can intake during the evening, during the dinner, whatever that looks like. So that means we can, we'll have a little bit more liberty to engage with the higher calorie density foods like cookies, pies, whatever, gravies, that kind of thing. Basically sugars and fats. I would agree that although that is technically true, that is also something you probably want to avoid. And here's why. Number one, the body loves consistency. So what you really should do is actually keep things as consistent as possible. So if you're used to eating on a schedule, don't worry about like when supper is and then you need to like, oh, I need to make sure that I eat before that so I'm not hungry, or like I need to skip a meal and do that. No, just eat like you normally would. Now sometimes it depends on timing, right? Because maybe the event falls like a little bit after you would eat and you're like, I don't want to eat right before it, but then also I'm going to be a little bit too hungry, so you have to play with the timing a bit. But you should not intentionally skip meals, or you shouldn't intentionally kind of like gorge yourself beforehand so you don't eat. Keep things consistent because your body relies on those rhythms of, hey, you usually eat at noon, so your body around 11:30 is going to be like, hey, let's gear up to eat because that's when we typically eat. Try to keep things mostly the same whenever you can. Don't try to get in this habit of manipulating, skipping meals, things like that. Now, like, can we tweak our caloric intake earlier in the day? Maybe, right? If you want to reduce calories a little bit, like, hey, maybe don't put cheese on the breakfast sandwich because that's 100 calories. So maybe like that would be better served later. Sure, like maybe those couple of optional things, but don't skip breakfast so that you can eat more later. That kind of gets us into a weird routine, and I think ultimately it is a bad habit to get into and a bad nutritional behavior because it just this compensatory type thing of like your trade-offs. It can put us in a weird place, right? So let's try not to do that, especially around events. My camera froze. One sec. Can I turn my camera back on? All right, here we go. Yeah, it does that sometimes. All right, so yeah, your body loves rhythms, so just try to stay consistent with what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing and don't really change it that much. If you want to manipulate kind of what you eat, maybe a little bit when you eat and a little bit with the quantity, sure, we can play with that, but don't be skipping meals, don't be skipping lunch, don't be skipping your normal snacks. Do what you normally would and don't change much because your body loves that rhythm and it'll expect to go in that rhythm. And if you have one day where you have a Christmas party and you're gonna go a little bit too far, cool. The next day, just keep doing what you're doing because that consistency is gonna bleed through. Whereas when you start manipulating things, you manipulate things 2 or 3 days in a row and all of a sudden you don't have a routine anymore. And then we can't go back into that. Oh, why is my camera frozen again? All right, I'm just gonna switch cameras, 1 second. Okay, here we go. It's not giving the opportunity to switch cameras. Oh, I don't know how to start this over. Oh, maybe we just won't do it without a camera. Fuck it. Okay, so next one. Prioritize protein, all right? So protein is one of the easiest things for us to leverage around the holidays. Protein is satiating. It helps us hit our goals. It's probably one of the hardest things to do on a regular basis anyways. So if we can eat our high protein meals during the day, then we don't have to concern too much about it in the evening. If we have a big party tonight or family dinner, of course there's gonna be a lot of protein around there because you have the turkey, you have the hams, all that kind of stuff. But if you do it during the day and make sure you hit like 80% of your goals before then we don't really need to worry about it. Anything we do is extra, right? Protein is gonna help us with satiation, it's going to help us with building muscle, it's going to help with recovery, and typically around the holidays we have extra time to work out, so maybe we actually move a little bit more and have a little bit more intentful workouts. So yeah, make sure you hit your protein goals, eat high protein meals early in the day, that way you don't have to worry about it later. Prioritize protein at mealtime so that when you are eating at your family dinner, go for that turkey, go for that ham. Those things are gonna help, and eat them right away, because those are gonna serve you better than a lot of the carbs, a lot of the sweet desserts, that kind of thing. And then as well, if you're having seconds, so if you're still hungry, go for protein again, because having that protein is going to fill you faster. It's going to help you burn energy, because we know that protein is more thermogenic, which means it takes more energy to burn protein or to assimilate protein into your body. And it'll keep you fuller longer. So keep that in mind. Number 3, know your weaknesses. Okay, so this one is very kind of personal to you, in that I think sometimes, it's I feel like almost this is not like nutrition, but when you know your weaknesses with nutrition, you know that, like, hey, if I'm a sweets person, the dessert table is going to be something I need to avoid, right? I can have like all the gravy, turkey, stuffing, all that kind of stuff. No big deal. It is what it is. But I have that one cookie, and all of a sudden I turn into the Cookie Monster. So I'm not saying like you have to avoid that, but if you know like that's where you're weak, and especially like maybe after a couple of drinks, you're like, I will turn into a Cookie Monster, then that's something that you should avoid, or at least focus your attention on, right? So that you know that you have the cookie, you're going to turn into the Cookie Monster. Try to, like, I'm going to put all my energy into capping that at 1 or 2 cookies, so I can have my cake and eat it too, per se, but then also not completely binge and go off the rails by eating 100 cookies. So I just follow this formula. You figure out when you're liable to fail with your nutrition, make a plan on how to avoid that failure or reduce the severity of failure, and then execute, right? So, for example, for me, chocolate is my biggest weakness. I know that before dinner, and dinner is usually fine, I have no desire to overeat on those foods, but if I'm going to fail my nutrition, it's going to be around the dessert table. So, what are we going to do to reduce that? Okay, since I know that's where I'm weak, I can do things to avoid it at all costs. Maybe it's wise to actually overeat on turkey and vegetables and gravy, because I'll be full, and that means I won't eat 20 cookies. Right? And if I don't eat 20 cookies, I don't feel guilty about myself. And if I don't feel guilty about myself, then I won't spiral into a shame spiral of then eating everything else, drinking, and then next day's ruin, and then next week's ruin. Okay? So think about that. Just know where you fail, build a plan around that, and then move forward from there. Number 4, take it easy on booze. So I'm not any kind of like anti-booze type person. Currently I'm trying this whole sobriety thing, not because I feel like I need it. Weird how we always have this explain sobriety, but I just feel like I feel better. I've always kind of been like a casual beer drinker, just like one here, one there, but I feel like I'm so close to sober, it's like, why not just make it sober? Because I'll just feel better anyway. So I'm trying that, but just take it easy on the booze, okay? My whole philosophy is this, and I think once I just describe this, you'll get the picture of exactly how I feel about it. It's the 45 minutes of straight snacking while you drink. It's the late suppers and pizza ordering. It's the 2 a.m. drive through McDonald's. It's the 10 a.m. drive through McDonald's for breakfast. It's the skip the training the next day because you're hungover. It's no meal planning on a Sunday because you're hungover. Drinking, to me, is not really so much about the effects of drinking. Like, I could give you all the effects on acute alcohol intake and how it's going to affect your recovery and you're building muscle and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, I'm not really too concerned about that because people have their social things like, hey, I want to go drink because I want to let loose and have fun and it's a social lubricant. That's none of my business. You have to do that. But I think what we need to be careful of is that it's not really the alcohol that you drink and the food that you have with dinner and stuff like that. It's everything that happens indirectly stemming from that. So it's the unlimited snacking that you're having unknowingly while you're drunk. Right? Who knows how much you ate while you were drunk? It's you finish eating and then you go to McDonald's at 2 a.m. and then you're hungover and you wake up sick at 10 a.m. You're like, I need to eat McDonald's. I need something greasy to fill my stomach. It's all those things that, as a nutrition coach, you're like, that's where we need to be careful because I feel like that's where 80% of the damage is done, and we just continue. And it goes away from like a 4-hour thing and turns into like a 2-day thing. Right, and those 4 hours, how much impact on the health is going to be? Not that much, right? Well, I guess it maybe depends on how you drink. Drink responsibly, but it's really about the 2 days after or what the fuck happens from that. That's going to be a big deal, right? So, I don't think any of us are, belligerent drunks or anything. I'm not insinuating that, but you just need to be a little bit careful about the habits that stem from drinking. So if you're going to get a little into it, cool, party, have fun, all that kind of stuff. Just be a little bit careful about some of the habits that arise after that. Next one, a little bit more logical with this one. Eat until you're 80% full. then pause. Okay. You'll probably hear a lot of nutrition coaches say like you should eat till you're 80% full and stop. Okay. I'm not so much big about that because I don't like to tell people exactly when or when not to eat, because even though we do have macros and things like that to follow, if you end up overeating, as long as you're hungry, I'm okay with that. If you like go 300 calories over your total and then just go, yeah, I was hungry. Like I couldn't, listen to the macro rule. I was hungry, so I ate a little bit more. I will 100% always be okay with that. That's probably just indicative that something weird happened that day to make you more hungry, or your calories are too low. So if you're hungry, do more. But that's why I changed this word from stop to pause, because what we should do is learn to eat until we're sated, until we're not full, but we're satisfied. Then pause and think, before I get more, before I finish, ask yourself some of these questions. Should I eat this? Do I need to eat this? Am I even hungry? Like maybe you eat your full serving and you're like, I do really want more because it's really good, but then also, do I really need it? I'm probably okay, right? I can probably move on now. I think if you just stop, pause, and ask yourself those questions and actually reflect, I don't really care what your decision is after the fact. I think just the fact that you stopped, paused, and thought about it puts you so far ahead in terms of being having a certain intuition with your nutrition. Okay, because a lot of the times what we do is just we instinctively, subconsciously just keep going, and we don't even pause to think. So if you can pause and think, even if you make the decision like, yeah, no, I want this, I'm not even hungry, but I want to fucking eat this, I'm 100% cool with that as well. But if you stop to think about it, that's succeeding in my books. Okay, you just have to make the decision to continue or not. I don't care really what the rationale behind it is, as long as you stopped, paused, thought about it, made the decision. I am super happy about that. Okay, so as soon as you hit that 80% mark, well, we don't really know what that is in terms of how sated you are, but eat until you're 80% full, pause, take some stock, and then make a decision what you want to do. Do you want to keep eating? Sure. If you don't, cool. All right, next, don't let yourself get too hungry. So this one's probably a pretty blatantly obvious one. Just don't let yourself get way too hungry, right? This kind of goes in line with skipping the meals. If you let yourself get way too hungry, you're way, 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 way more likely to overcompensate by like just filling the hole to the brim with whatever you can, right? I know I'm pretty bad with that. If I get hangry or hungry, my decision making goes out the window. Okay, we don't want our decision making to go out the window completely. Like if it happens, if you get stuck, of course, but try not to let yourself get too hungry. So if you know that, hey, there's like a 5-hour gap between my meal and then like the dinner, I'm not sure if I can make it. So like maybe I should have like a protein shake or maybe like a RX bar or something like an hour or two before it, just to make sure that I don't go up completely hungry, right? That would be a great option because we're not letting ourselves get to that point of I'm going to eat someone's head, which can lead to some poor decision making, right? So try not to get to that point where you're going to let yourself almost fall prey to your basic instincts of having to fuel yourself. So once you get to that point, God knows what's going to happen. So don't let it get that far. The next one, focus your carbs around fibrous vegetables rather than starchy carbs. Okay, pretty basic. There's nothing wrong with potatoes. I don't want this to be like a vegetables versus, or like leafy greens versus potatoes or anything like that. But if you can fill your plate with a little bit more fibrous vegetables, kale, broccoli, whatever that looks like, try to do that because they take a little bit longer to digest. There's more fiber. Recently, one of my trainings, I talk about like a carb to fiber ratio. So the foods that have a higher, lower ratio, basically got closer to a 1-to-1 ratio of carbs and fiber. So there's more fiber in those foods. They're better at fighting like diabetes, making us less insulin resistant, helping our blood sugars adapt and having to use less insulin, that kind of thing. So that's always good. And those blood sugar levels are often, if we take a lot of food in at once, our blood sugar levels are going to spike, especially when it's sweets, especially when it's like sugary foods. And sometimes we get those things around the holidays, regardless if they're desserts or not. Those spiking of the blood sugar levels, can cause all kinds of cravings, crashes, tiredness when it gets manipulated very quickly. So the more fiber we have, the more likely that those are going to stay consistent within reasonable levels. So something good to think about. Try to get as much fiber as you can. And not that these don't have any fiber, but the more fibrous vegetables that we have, anything that has cellulose in it, you're more likely to stay satiated longer, keep your blood sugar levels under control, and you'll be able to go on from there. So keep that in mind. Okay, so next, eat more whole foods than processed foods. That one's a pretty rudimentary suggestion, and probably one that you see in nutrition circles quite often. Trying to stay away from processed foods, right? Not that processed foods are bad, but what does happen is that they're void of any meaningful nutrients, so they're not getting really satiated from a nutrient, density point of view. We're going to be missing a lot of things. When we're missing things, our body craves things. So keep that in mind, as well as they're super calorie dense. So anything that's like hyper palatable, and highly processed, you're going to get super calorie dense. Okay, a lot of the time anyway. So try to avoid those when possible, but it kind of like paint the picture of like, how do you decide what a whole food is around Christmas time? The basic way that I can describe it is that it looks like what it is. Okay, a potato, and I know the last kind of topic I a little bit demonized potatoes a little bit, not really, but a potato, what does it look like? It looks like a potato, right? But then sometimes you have like a casserole, it's like a potato casserole or something like that, or broccoli casserole, I don't know, chicken casserole. Like, okay, there's a whole homogenous type thing of going on there. There's like cheese and there's God knows what in there. That's probably less whole because there's a lot of processing that goes into it. It doesn't really look like what it describes. It looks like a chicken casserole, yes, but does it look like a chicken? Does it look like a potato? No, it doesn't. So single ingredient foods are typically whole. Now, again, it's a spectrum, because you could have like a whole chicken, which is pretty close to a freaking chicken. You can have a chicken casserole, which is kind of a processed version of the chicken with other things involved. But then you have like KFC chicken, which is like, that's way further down the spectrum. And it's an entire spectrum. And you want to go as close as possible to whole foods. But that's based on the selection that you have in front of you. So I think it's not so much like trying to focus on whole foods as really trying to avoid that end spectrum of highly processed stuff. And most of that's going to be desserts and stuff like that, unfortunately. So a lot of the time with Christmas, this is one of the good things about the holidays, is that people are doing homemade meals. So if you could focus on the proteins, the vegetables, things like that, then you're good to go. Try to avoid the desserts, because most of those are not going to be homemade. Now you might have one, even if they are homemade, they're probably, using ingredients, flour, sugar, other things that are probably not the best for you. And I'm not saying that you can't have those things, but just keep it in mind that those are going to be processed foods, and we want to reduce those as much as possible. Okay. This one is probably my favorite one, but it's the reason why I saved it for last on the nutrition spectrum, is fuck it. Okay. A lot of the time, sometimes the I guess the mental fortitude it takes to plan this stuff, to think about this in advance, to worry about what your weaknesses are and figure out, what do I need to do? Sometimes it's better just to say fuck it, right? We have to realize that a lot of the times with their nutrition, the damage that you can do in one meal or even like a day of relaxing, it's not going to be that much, because you've been consistent for at least 10 to 12, 14 days before that. So you're going to be good to go. We'll get more into this later about what you need to watch out for. But if you say fuck it, sometimes that's just the little bit of relaxation that you need, a little bit of freedom that you need to be able to relax, enjoy what you're going to enjoy, and then get back on tomorrow. Okay? So I know this almost probably should fall in the psychological degree, but I wanted to include it here because a lot of people will say fuck it with your nutrition. Now, important to call out, and I would have to call this out as a nutrition coach, because what a nutrition coach tells you to say fuck it. What I don't want you to do is say fuck it for the entire rest of the month. Okay, so if you have like a family dinner on the 23rd where you say, okay, it's, we're going to relax a little bit, it's my first day off work, whatever, fuck it. But then we don't want to say fuck it for the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, and so on, right? And then you go January 3rd, what the fuck happened? No, say fuck it for that meal. Maybe even say fuck it for that day, but don't keep saying fuck it. Okay? What I want you to do, fuck it on the big days. It sounds so funny to say. Fuck it on the big days so you can sit back and relax. Fuck it on the big meals, but don't keep saying it, all right? Because that can be dangerous. And I don't want you to get a fuck it attitude towards nutrition, but if it's helpful in that one instance, then I want you to play that card, all right? So next we'll go into habit tips. I'm gonna go straight into it because in the interest of us already covering the nutrition and this not being an hour-long training, I really want to kind of get to this stuff. So work out more, move more. All right, so this, I feel like, is a little bit controversial. Now, it might be weird to say, but I feel like you'll probably agree with me a little bit as I kind of explain my position behind it. I don't want you to get mad if I tell you to work out more over the holidays to compensate for the extra energy that you have. But the reason that I say that is that I don't want it to be like, hey, you overate, so you have to move more to burn that calories. No, it's not that. I just want to think about it from a logical point of view of saying, hey, around the holidays, our energy intake is going to be up. So if our energy intake is going to be up, we could supplement that with more movement because we have more energy. So if we have more energy, and I know there's many athletes out there, many of you as well, that struggle with under eating. If we have more energy available to us, let's use that energy, okay? Use that energy for good. There's nothing worse than getting all this extra energy and then sitting on the couch and doing fucking nothing. You can do that. It's not the worst thing in the world, but go for an extra long workout. Go for another workout if it's okay and you're not depleted or sore or I'm not always advocating for 2-a-day workouts or anything, but hey, if you just worked out 3 days in a row and you're having a family meal and a fourth one, hey, get an extra workout in tomorrow or something. And maybe not even work out, maybe just move more, go for a walk, something like that. Just move more and do more things that are going to require energy because you have more energy. I just want to look at it from that. So I think the important call out is here. Where is it? Right. If you have more energy, this means we have more energy to spend. You get to crush a while with some extra energy. Oh, where do I have it? Yeah, the difference between I ate, therefore I have to work out, which is seen as toxic type of behavior of saying you shouldn't punish yourself by eating with workout, right? You don't have to go on the treadmill for 20 minutes to try to burn that calories, but it should be I ate, therefore I get to work out more. I have more energy, so I can do more things. I feel like that difference is subtle, but it's huge at the same time. Just noting that difference can be very big. So again, if you're not in that camp, I totally understand. I can see the case for hey, no, you shouldn't be moving more just because you're eating more. But I also think that if we do have the extra energy coming in, we can afford a little bit more energy expenditure, if that makes sense. So something to just keep in mind. If you want to yell at me, that's fine. This goes right into our next habit tip, which is go for a walk after eating. Okay, so this is a nice little hack. So essentially when we eat, our blood sugar levels rise. As our blood sugar levels rise, our body will either use it, right, immediately for movement, energy, like I said, or it will store it because, and it'll store it as adipose tissue because that's the extra energy. So that's what happens when you're in a consistent calorie surplus. Your body stores energy as body fat. So one thing we can actually do to kind of hack that a little bit is that when we eat and our blood sugars begin to rise, you follow it up with a form of muscle contraction. So whether that's working out, whether that's going for a walk, both are muscle contractions. The muscle contraction will allow you to essentially use that energy for free without your body having to produce insulin and without having to store it. So you essentially bypass the requirement of producing insulin, which is going to make you less insulin sensitive or insensitive, which means that it doesn't respond, basically diabetes. And then it doesn't get stored as adipose tissue. Now, again, it's not one for one, hey, you just eat a huge meal, go for a walk for 5 minutes, and you're good to go. No, it has to kind of be balanced to a degree where if you're going to eat 1,200 calories, you probably have to go for a walk for an hour to be able to mitigate the full effects of that. But if you're going to be burning energy, your body's more likely to just use that right away. So instead of it just going through your bloodstream and go, hey, we're not using it, store it, because you're sitting on the couch holding your belly because you ate so much, if you go for a walk, you're probably going to negate a lot of those effects. Okay, so go for a walk, go for a workout after if you want. Nothing too serious, very casual, and that'll be putting you in a good place. So next one, protect your sleep schedule. Okay, sleep is beneficial for a lot of things. We sleep 30% of our lives, and it's not by accident, right? It's really important. Just like you have to eat, you have to sleep. So sleep is beneficial for building muscle, forming memories, controlling our mood, helping us deal with stress, production and management of hormones, better satiety. More sleep, this is my favorite. More sleep equals less time awake equals less time to battle cravings. So I always find that if I had a really shitty night of sleep and I'm up at 3 or 4 o'clock, maybe I'll have breakfast at 5 instead of 7, and then by like 7 or 8, I'm like, I'm hungry again. So I just had to have like an extra meal because I was awake 3 or 4 hours longer, which kind of sucks. But it's just the way I think, I guess. It helps you keep cravings at bay, controlling circadian rhythms as well. So anytime that you can protect sleep during the holidays, try not to change it too much. It will help you. Again, like kind of going back to point number 1 of keeping routines, whether it's nutrition or your sleep. If you can keep it routine and routinized, it's going to put you in a good place. I feel like I keep saying that, in a good place. But you know what I mean. So think about doing the following. Go to bed and wake up the same time as you normally would. And this is going to be very reminiscent of your typical sleep advice, right? Go to bed and wake up the same time. Avoid caffeine 6 hours before bedtime. I feel like we can get a little bit looser with that around the holidays because you have dinner and someone's like, hey, do you want coffee? I'm like, it's 6 o'clock, why are we having coffee? You know, I go to bed in 2.5 hours. But, you know, sometimes we'll do that. We'll have a little more caffeine, or chocolate also contains caffeine, so that can happen. So try to avoid caffeine 6 hours before bedtime if you can. Don't eat a huge meal or before bed, or at least 1 to 2 hours before bed, because that kind of uses digestion muscles, and when we sleep, we want to turn those off or not worry about them. Avoid alcohol where possible. Alcohol is the biggest sleep destroyer. All right, so avoid that where possible. Keep your sleep routine in check and consistent no matter the day. So a lot of the time we can kind of say that, I don't know, go to bed really, really late, then sleep in, and then sometimes just that one day can kind of fuck up our whole schedule, because then by our normal bedtime the next day we're not tired, then we have to, and then it's just like a whole battle. So sometimes you kind of just got to eat shit that one day of like, hey, I'm gonna go to bed at midnight instead of 8 p.m. but I'm still gonna wake up at 5 so that the next day I can go back to my normal bed schedule and then keep it routine. So try to protect sleep as much as you can. All right, so now we're into psychological tips. We're 30 minutes into the training, so hopefully I can kind of run through this fairly quickly. This is a really important conversation to have, though, because this is, I feel like, where a lot of people do struggle. They know what they need to do. They know what a couple of hacks and tricks they could do for staying consistent around the holidays, but sometimes changing your perspective and changing your mindset, changing your beliefs can go way further than just like, hey, eating until you're 80% full, right? So I want to talk about here the biopsychosocial component of nutrition. And that nutrition is not in a vacuum, right? It's not just about one specific moment or anything like that. It's all about context, and it's all about different factors. And there's a biological component, which is like, hey, how your body reacts to certain nutrients, how things get synthesized and assimilated into your system, how we burn energy, all that kind of stuff. There's also a psychological component in that you can have all your physical needs met, and just the psychological aspect of food can make you want to crave something or eat something. But then there's also the sociological component of you can have all your physical and psychological needs met, and maybe just because you're at dinner you feel the need to either eat or drink, stuff like that. And then we're social beings, so all this kind of plays into a role, and that's what we call biopsychosocial. So we'll get into some of these. The first one, there's a little bit of a kind of a talk on placebo effect, and I talk about a book called The Expectation Effect, which is really cool about the psychological components of food. So read this yourself. I won't talk about it now because in the interest of time, super interesting about that. And if you want to know more about the book, just shoot me a message. I'll tell you all about it. It's a fucking cool book. So there are only 5 meals during the holidays. Okay, it depends on the person, but it's probably somewhere between 1 to 10. I don't know. Maybe that. Just take the average of that of 5. Point being is that there's like 5 meals during the holidays and 1,000 during the year. Why do we place so much value and so much importance on this little couple of meals, right? There's a lot of pressure on us to do what's right through those 4 or 5 days. And I feel like we put way too much pressure on ourselves, and it's just, it ends up being too much. So the problem is, though, is that many athletes get in a trap around December, okay? So it's not like December 25th is when we enter that trap. It's usually December 1st. So 17 days ago where we possibly entered that trap. November ends, we see like the December 1st on the calendar, and I've had this told to me specifically from an athlete that like it's the holidays. It's December 1st. It's the holidays. I can do whatever I want. I'm going to eat that cookie because it's the holidays. It's not the holidays. December 1st is not the holidays. It's the month of holidays. Like, imagine if your birthday, like my birthday is June 21st. Imagine like June 1st, I'm like, it's my birthday. You have to get me my present. It's my birthday. It's my birthday month. It's like, no, it's not your birthday's in 20 fucking days. Chill. Same thing with the holidays. Now, like you might go on holidays a little bit earlier because I don't know, maybe you're a teacher. Do teachers go on holidays earlier? Probably. So typically we have like a little bit more holiday freedom because we take more time off around the holidays. But still, we get in this little trap of always making excuses like, hey, it's the holidays, and we shouldn't do that. So if that's what you want to do, cool. But I suggest not doing that. We want to break this idea of black and white thinking where we're either all in or all out, and we kind of bounce back between like, I'm going to be making all these bad decisions because it's the holidays. So I give an example here. Like, we have to understand that each decision we make is essentially a vote cast for the type of person you want to be, right? So for example, let's say we open the fridge and we see fruits and veggies, and then we also see a leftover 3-cheese spinach and bacon dip. Okay, so we're immediately confronted with those two things. We have a decision to make. We're hungry. We want one of them. Which one is going to support your goals? Which one won't? Which one will get you a step closer to goals, and which one is going to make you take a step back? So, you have to expand these decisions across 30, 60, 90 days, way into the future. That's when these votes add up. So, if you're always going to be the person that goes for the fruits and veggies and stays away from the spinach dip, you're probably going to be in a good place. If you're a person that consistently goes for the spinach dip and says fuck the vegetables, that's also going to put you in a different place. If you make that decision once, it doesn't define who you are because that's only one vote. You have to add up all the votes across the campaign. So, for example, let's say 90 days from now, you add up all the votes, all the little decisions you made. Did you support your goal or did you not support your goal? 20% of votes for A, so the veggies, right? So you only voted 20% of the time to support your goals. 80% of the times you voted for not supporting your goals. You fall backwards, you feel like shit, you lose confidence, you put on body fat, all that stuff. Let's say you do 50-50, which is not good if you think about it. It's kind of like flip a coin whether you make a good decision or not. There's probably most people, nothing changes. You kind of at status quo thing, you're not putting on weight, but you're not getting any leaner either. You're kind of just hanging out. Nothing wrong with that either, but that can be a state of being for a lot of people. And then maybe you do 80% of votes for A, which is 80% of the time you're going for the veggies, you're going for the fruit, right? And then 20% of the time you're going for the processed shit, the spinach dip, the bacon dip, that kind of stuff. But what happens then? You make progress, you get the body you want, you crush your goals. Now, that can be more than 80%, of course, but just as an example, if you make mostly the good decision most of the time, you're going to be in a good place. If you make mostly the bad decision most of the time, you're not, okay? So, to bring that back, it's not really, the weight that we put on those 5 meals is we put way more pressure on than we should, right? That's like putting more of an emphasis on a politician because they voted one way than any other person. No, we all have the same weight with our votes, right? Just like you do in your meals. It's more about what you do on a daily basis, on a consistent basis, than it is about any given meal. So try not to think of those as any more important than any other meal. So I want to go over a nice quote that I mentioned here. I got this from I guess you call him a friend of mine, / unknowing mentor, because I look up to this dude and he says a lot of cool shit. So I follow him. You probably do too. Matthew J. Philly, who is the CEO of Primal Mobility, he once said, "We are the product of the stimulus our body is placed under." So he said that in a mobility context. All right, in that, how are you ever going to get better at a squat if you're never doing a squat, right? So if you want to get better at a squat, spend more time in the squat, whether that's doing squats or just in a squat position, right? So if you want to get better in an overhead position, you need to be in the overhead position. But I think this also applies to nutrition, right? If you eat like shit most of the time, you'll feel and look like shit. If you eat clean and work out consistently 80% of the time, you'll probably be in a good spot. So we are the product of the stimulus that our body is placed under. Keep that in mind. All right, here. Don't miss twice. Don't let a ruined day spiral into June and have no idea what's going on, okay? There's this weird kind of thing that we get into where we say like, hey, fuck it, we'll start over on Monday, right? So we fuck up on Friday, we go, all right, well, maybe I got a little bit drunk on Friday and ate too much, but hey, fuck it, we'll start Monday, no big deal, okay? Not good, because what happens, maybe Monday's a little bit busier than we thought, work is crazy, we forgot to meal prep because we were hungover on Sunday. Then it's like, Tuesday or Wednesday rolls around, you're like, fuck, this week was kind of a wash, next week. And then that whole mindset of just next week, tomorrow, and that turns into, it's June and you didn't do fucking shit. So keep that in mind. I always say don't miss twice. Okay, that's in the book of Atomic Habits as a good strategy of nipping in the butt. If you could stop that shit from rolling downhill and speeding up and being harder to stop, you fuck up once, cool. Next meal, don't fuck up. You fuck up today, cool. Don't fuck up tomorrow. Right? Go back to what you were doing. Go back to the processes. Go back to the systems, because that is not you. Anyone can fuck up once. It's not a big deal. I don't even like considering it fucking up, because I don't think like having a cheat meal or missing a workout or anything is any kind of like fucking up. But just for simplicity of communication, you understand what I mean when I say you fucked up, right? Because we often see it that way as well. So don't let that happen. Don't miss twice. Every day start from zero, and it's square one. Okay, you want to be back on track every single day. Don't let it spiral out of control, because when it does spiral out of control, it's way harder to solve. Okay, next one is build a positive image of yourself. All right, that one's a little bit harder to do because it takes time and it takes effort. This one is also talked about a little bit in the Atomic Habits, kind of indirectly. Excuse me. But there's a good example here. Example of two smokers, right? One smoker who identifies as a smoker in recovery, and one smoker who identifies as a non-smoker. So essentially they're both quitting, right? And they're both presented with the opportunity to smoke. So maybe they walk through people outside smoking, and someone offers them a cigarette. Number one, the former smoker who identifies as a smoker in recovery is going to say, like, no thanks, I'm in recovery, I can't smoke. Which they're then putting the responsibility on them saying no and having the willpower to do that. So they're kind of identifying as a smoker indirectly. Whereas a smoker who identifies as a non-smoker is going to say, no thanks, I'm not a smoker. Which, if you're not a smoker, you would realize that someone you offering a cigarette, it's not like you have to consciously be like, oh no, I don't want it. Like it's almost, I wouldn't, maybe not disgusting, but there's nothing inside you that's like, oh, I want that. It's very like, no, why would you offer me that? I'm not a smoker. Like, no. That identification is really what's powerful. Okay? You're way more likely to resist that kind of thing, or not even be interested at all, if you identify that way. So the identification of self and the image that you build around yourself is way more important than anything else. Okay? So how does that apply to the holidays? How does that example apply? Start building an image about yourself, because sometimes we'll be like, you know, oh, I'm a chocolate fiend, right? I love chocolate. So that anytime you're exposed to it, you kind of just go like, oh, I'm a chocolate fiend. I'm fighting everything I can to say no to what I'm seeing here. Whereas like, start thinking about it deeply. Like you're only convincing yourself that you're a chocolate fiend, right? It's because you enjoy it a lot. So you're only a person. Try to start changing your image about yourself. Like, hey, you're not a chocolate fiend. You just like desserts. So, you know, you can do that. But I think if we start kind of like re-identifying as like, no, I'm not a hugely chocolate person. I like desserts. You know what I mean? Then you can kind of almost hack that weakness of not being that important, if that makes sense. So try to dispel some of those negative beliefs about yourself. Make it a positive image if you can. Like, you know, if you can imagine a world where you resist temptation, you don't get drunk, you feel good, you crush wads, destroy the open, you get the body you want, you may start behaving accordingly and getting closer to your goals. So if you like identify, like, you know, it's, and I see that I could talk about this forever, because I see this in CrossFit a lot, where someone's like, hey, I'm not an athlete, right? It's like, okay, well, you just think you're not. The fact that you do CrossFit pretty much puts you in the athlete camp, whether you like it or not. But I see a lot of correlation between the people that do willingly identify as athletes and the habits they do on a daily basis, right? They're more likely to try to get better sleep. They're more likely to have at least some type of nutrition protocol. They'll try to better themselves in a lot of aspects, which is what athletes do. So sometimes just the way you identify, the image that you give yourself, is going to be where you win or lose. All right, next one, differentiate between excuses and regular indulgement. It's not saying that that's a word. Fuck it. Indulgement. That's a word now. So I'm going to try not to go deep on this one because we're running out of time here. But eating bad foods once, not an issue, right? Almost everyone can recognize that. But trends of eating bad foods is maybe requires some intervention, okay? We need to start understanding the difference between the story that we tell ourselves about our excuses and how we eat. So anyone can have a regular excuse on any day. any reason to go through a drive-through, get something simple, something easy, that can happen. But once it starts to become a habit, we have to realize that we're no longer, beholden to, hey, we're so busy, we need to just do this because we're so busy, we need to just go through a drive-through. A lot of the time, that's going to be a story of your own making, right? This is an example I give. You've just driven through a McDonald's drive-through and got a Big Mac. Only you can know whether that's a warranted choice or not. As a nutrition coach, without context, I can't tell if that's a good decision for you, right? Maybe you're a person that hasn't had McDonald's in years, like, okay, that probably wasn't the best decision, but it's going to kill you, no, not a big deal. But we can get caught up in this excuse loop where once we understand that we can pull the I'm too busy card, hey, I'm too busy to drive through, we get a reward in the form of Big Mac, which is mouth pleasure, makes us feel good momentarily, short term, but not long term happy, just short term happy. Then we condition our body to pull that card more often because we pull the card, we get reward. Then you pull the card because, hey, I'm too busy, I get McDonald's, yeah, all right, treat, which is not good, right? So we need to understand the difference between indulging once and going, fuck it, I'll go through the drive-thru, whatever, versus like you continually start to do those excuse behaviors of just giving yourself an out to not follow the process, okay? And that just comes down to being mindful about it. Sometimes we do that without even recognizing it, and I think if you can recognize that, that's going to put you in a better place. So now on to logistical tips. I don't want to get too much into logistical tips because they're very just straightforward. Like, hey, these are just things that you should probably do straightforward through the holidays to make it a little bit easier on yourself. Okay? First one, this will be a little bit funny, but make your own healthy holiday meal to bring. So no, I don't want you to be the family member that like brings their own like ready-made salad just for them. I'm not talking about that. That would be fucking weird, right? If you go to a family dinner and bring your own food and you're like, this is mine, this is what I'm eating. That's weird. But what I do want you to do is like, if it's like a potluck style, or like kind of, sometimes around those family things we're expected to bring something, whether it's a dessert or a side or something like that. Make your own, make it healthy, and bring it. That way you have, like, if you see nothing that's like, oh, that doesn't look like it's going to help you hit my goal, like that's a lot of bad food, at least you always have something there that you can lean on that's going to be helping you move towards your goals. So you have that option there. I'm not even saying you need to eat it. Just having the option there and there for you to eat when you're ready is going to be possibly a game changer. Okay? You can calculate out the macros. You can calculate out the servings. You know what's in it. That's just such a no-brainer. So if you can do that, put the little bit of extra effort in to make like a healthy potluck type meal for yourself. It can be like protein based or something, or even like a side, just like vegetables done up in a certain way. That's not like, here I brought an apple pie. You know what I mean? I think that could be a game changer. So make your own healthy holiday meal to bring. Avoid hanging around the kitchen or food table. So I talk a lot here about something called ego depletion theory, which essentially states that anytime a person overrides a mood, a sensation, a craving, or a desire, it begins depleting a reservoir of self-control that, as the theory states, can be depleted, right? And then what happens when we get depleted results in further indulgent behavior that we're actually hoping to resist. So essentially, you get exposed to too many things you have to say no to, and then all of a sudden it's like you reach a point where you're like, fuck it, I'm done, I can't say no anymore, right? So the example that I kind of give is, if you hang around the kitchen or the food tables, like you look down at the food, you're like, oh man, that looks so good, no, shouldn't do it. And then you go no, and then you do that 10, 15 times across a couple hours, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, fuck it, okay, fine, I'll do it, right? So stay away from that. Just don't get exposed to that type of thing. Some people are going to be different. Some people, like, there are going to be some times where I can sit by the dessert table and I'm going to be fine. There's no desire. And then sometimes I'm going to go there and immediately be like, fuck, I'm fighting inner demons right now to say no. But you just need to be careful about that stuff. Don't hang around there if you know that you're weak around that, okay? Next, don't track meals. Focus more on the low-hanging fruit. Simply put, and I feel like I say this a lot, is that tracking macros isn't the magic bullet that suddenly cures all, right? A lot of the benefit that we get from counting macros is this. You stop eating like assholes. You stop snacking. You stop eating shit foods. You eat more protein. Let's stop, eat more protein. Foods and eat more protein. You manage carbs better. Reduce super fatty foods that drive high calories. Those kind of things that probably get you like 60 to 80% of the way, probably more like 80% of the way when counting macros, right? You stop doing those things. But then they also make us, because we're locked in with nutrition, what happens? We pay attention to sleep, we move more, we stop scrolling TikTok and watching Netflix for hours, we WOD with more intention, we move more, all those kinds of things, right? Which is incidentally why we actually why nutrition studies are so hard, because you essentially have to lock humans and put them in a vacuum to study that your intervention stopped or like made these results. Because a lot of the time when you do an intervention and you try an experiment, you know, it's self-reported a lot of time for nutrition, but then also if someone's following, like, maybe you tell them they're following like a low-carb diet. Maybe someone just goes, oh, low-carb diet, that's good, I'm on a diet. Cool. Well, if I'm on a diet, I should probably walk or just start running. And then you can look at the study and go, hey, all these people lost weight. It's like, yeah, because they thought they were on a diet, so they started, like, you know, running and working out and shit, but they didn't do it before. So a lot of the times those things are inseparable, right? So point being, I feel like I'm going way off in the weeds on this one. But if you focus on the low-hanging fruit, like, hey, you don't necessarily need to track your meal when you're eating. Just don't eat like an asshole, and you're probably going to be fine, okay? Again, that's just a logical thing that I feel like we overlook sometimes. And this is the last one, finally. We're just at 50 minutes of this training. I've been talking for way too fucking long. Take a smaller plate, okay? Eat off a smaller plate. That's simple. This is almost like a psychological hack a little bit that I feel like I almost had to put in the psychology aspect, but I think this is just something that's very straightforward. It seems kind of silly, but I think it can actually be powerful. So we can kind of hack our senses there. This is something that they actually talk about in the that book, Expectation Effect, where they talk about there's actually a psychological benefit to reducing the size of the container that the food is on to make it appear bigger. If you put, like, you know, you say you have two things of soup, for example, both containing 100 milliliters of soup. You put one in like a really small bowl that's like filled to the brim of that soup. That looks appetizing. Like, oh man, look at that huge bowl of soup. But then you have like say if you have like a giant bowl and you only put like that same 100 milligrams of soup, but it looks like you're only filling out the bottom. It's like, hey, where's the rest of my soup? Even though it's exactly the same amount, the one in the smaller bowl is going to look and taste more appetizing and be filling than the one in the giant bowl. So make that connection to North American serving sizes all you want when you go out to restaurants. That's probably a huge thing about it. But you can reduce the plate. And the reason why I talk about that as well is that, like, have you ever gotten through 90% of your meal, feel completely full, but then you still feel a weird obligation to finish your plate? Like, I don't know, is that a politeness thing? I don't know, but there is something about it. So I'm not saying that take a smaller plate, keep it to one, and then don't eat again. No. I'm just saying, instead of using this giant plate that you then fill with like 2 layers of food and then pour gravy on it, then you eat half of it and you go, I'm full, but I need to finish it. Have a smaller plate, do that, finish it, and then go for fucking seconds, go for thirds. I don't care how fucking much you eat, but the fact that you kind of use that as a little bit of a psychological hack to at least cap it or not get into this weird place where you have to overeat because you just put too much on your plate, it's so silly, right? But I think it's actually powerful. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions about it, let me know. I think that's all there is to say about it. So if you have any questions about this training specifically, if you have any trainings about some of the points I brought up, if you have something to add, or maybe feel like there was a situation that wasn't covered that you'd like a little bit more information on, or if you just want to hop on a call and talk about a strategy going into the holidays because maybe you're really nervous about running into some weaknesses, running into some, you know, old habits, things like that, we can hop on a call and talk about some of the things that you can do to try to combat that. Other than that, I think it's good. So, yeah, that's it. If I'm not talking to you before the holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Enjoy your time off. You know, all this being said, I want to give this to you guys as like a tool to help you combat some of the nutritional pitfalls that we have during the holidays, but at the same time, sometimes it's better just to say fuck it, fuck all of this. Enjoy your time with family, enjoy your time with friends. Don't worry too much about it because, you know, January 1st and 2nd is going to come very quickly this year, and let's just be ready for it because we have the Open coming up in 2 months. Then before long, it'll be the summer, so we have plenty of time to crush our goals, so don't worry too much about it. But at the same time, if you want to be a smart, follow this guide. And with that, see you in the next one.